Hello, explorers, and welcome to Reach the World's Explorer program. For more than 25 years, Reach the World has inspired youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens through virtual exchange. My name is Tim, and today we're journeying back to Kruger National Park in South Africa to join Reach the World Explorer and Fulbright researcher Ryan Helcoski as he seeks to answer the big question: what really happens when an elephant dies? In just a minute, we'll connect live with Ryan and see exactly what a typical day of field research is like for a field ecologist. And I hope you've got your questions ready. At any point today, please drop them in the chat bar and I will work them into the conversation. If you have not already read Ryan's latest virtual exchange articles, I'd encourage you to visit the link to his journey homepage that I've added to the chat bar on YouTube. There you will find some additional amazing photos and stories from Ryan covering all aspects of his research and everyday life in South Africa. You truly will not want to miss it. Maybe save it for after our live stream, but definitely check it out. The link is in the chat. Everyone's joining a slightly different way today. So however you're following, thanks for being here. If you're joining us via YouTube, drop those questions and comments for Ryan in the chat at any time, and we'll fold them into today's event. The more questions, the better. It's a huge benefit of being able to connect live with Ryan, that we can ask him our questions, whatever your students are curious about. All right, now let's get to it. Joining us again all the way from Kruger National Park in South Africa, please welcome Mr. Ryan Helcoski. I'll bring him up as soon as I find him. There he is. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. It's great to see you again. How have you been?
I've been good. It's good to see you again, too. It's been getting colder here, so fieldwork's easier right now.
All right, that's good. I remember you talking last time about how hot it can be when you're out during the day. I'm glad to hear you're getting a little bit of weather relief. We have a lot to cover today for everyone's memory and maybe yours as well. Last time we talked all about elephants, just living, breathing, beautiful elephants, all of our questions about elephants. And today, we're really going to get to the heart of your work and why you are in South Africa. And we're going to take a look at what it's like to be a field ecologist investigating dead elephant sites. So I can't wait. I'm very, very excited to talk more about what I know you're passionate about too.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited too.
So maybe I'll get us started by bringing up some pictures. We can use those as guideposts as you tell us what it's like to conduct your research on a daily basis.
Okay, so this is at a site where I'm extracting bone meal. This was an elephant that died in 2016. This was a male, and you'll see that his remains, the bones are still around that area. They've actually been sitting there for so long that the bones are starting to flake apart, releasing phosphorus and nitrogen into the ground. Not all the sites we get to are like this, and this is usually probably about midday when I've hiked out to the site. You can see I've laid down the transects there and I'm getting ready to sample.
Excellent. This is maybe a little bit earlier in the day. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, that's some boxes with gear. That's the backpack that I carry out. I have to fill it with everything in those boxes. That's done obviously the night before or far in advance, depending on how much gear that I have and how much that I've got to take. But essentially those 3 boxes or so fit into that one backpack if I do it right. And then that's what I take with me.
All right, excellent. If we're going to virtually start our day with you, I need to bring up a great video that you recorded of you waking up.
So my daily routine, I wake up before the sun rises. This is where I'm staying. And these is all field equipment right here that I'm going to be going through for some of the sites that we have selected today. We'll be doing some field work. Got to load that up, have some breakfast. Wanted to show you quickly what it looks like outside. Still dark. It's 4:30.
Can't see much.
Yeah, it's very dark.
Too much. And I'll check in again when it's a bit brighter.
No hyenas that time, unfortunately. A lot of times that time of evening, well, I guess morning, I don't even know. That's when you'll start to hear the hyenas. They have if you've ever like seen anything animated, they don't sound anything like that. They don't do that laughing, jittering kind of call. They only really do that if they're feeding or if they're arguing. They have this sort of feline howl that you'll hear around that time, and they're always around. And I'm surprised we didn't hear any in that clip. I know I'm going to hear some tonight. And if you're lucky at that time, you'll hear the lions. I don't hear them too often because they travel pretty far. There's a lot less lions than hyenas here. There's hyenas everywhere. So you'll hear them all the time. And then lions, if they're somewhere around, you'll kind of hear them roar. If you're close enough to them, you like feel that roar in your belly in a way that I've never I've never felt before. It's very primal, I guess.
How exciting. You said in your video that you wake up on average at like 4:30 in the morning. Why do you wake up so early? Why do you get started so early?
Yeah, that's a good question. So normally my bags, I was unfortunately running late and behind, but normally I have my bag fully stocked before then. But even then, you have to wake up really early because you got to eat a lot because I'm not going to be able to eat again until the evening. And I also have to drive pretty far. Kruger, as I said last time, is about the size of New Jersey or twice the size of Yellowstone. And sometimes I have to go really far to get to some of these sites. And not only is it a lot of driving, it's then a lot of walking, and then it's setting everything up in the bush and then getting your data and getting to the next site. And so it's a lot of work. And if you don't start early enough, it's either going to be so hot that you can't work anymore. If it's 110 degrees, you really can't work very hard. Or it's going to get dark early. So you got to wake up long before the sun rises so that you can get started when the sun rises and be able to work all day throughout the until it gets too hot, at least.
Excellent. Is this one of your modes of transportation?
That is, yeah, that is me pretty much stuck in the mud, having to, we had to dig ourselves out there. That, they call them buckies here. It's a truck that I use that completely filled up in the back with even more field gear. There's additional poles and then some nets and things I think you'll see a bit later that we have to load that with to get out to our field site. And there's no one out coming to save you. So if you get stuck, you got to figure out how to get out of there.
Excellent. I've got one more video queued up of you unloading some gear. Maybe it'll give us a good look at what kind of gear you put in the back of that truck.
Yeah.
Let's take a look here.
I think there's no audio with this one. Okay, good. So I can talk over it. Yeah, so the backpack you'll see right there, I think that's one of the first things I go for. That's, I don't even know in pounds, well over 40, 50 pounds or more. And then right there, that's mesh. That's we use that when we're constructing enclosures to keep other animals out. You can see I have my socks rolled up like that. That's to keep ticks out, so that kind of like homemade tick repellent. And those big metal things that I'm moving there, they call them standards. They're big metal poles. So we have to use that post pounder. There's another thing over there called a post pounder. And we use that to slam those into the ground. And then we put the metal, the wire around it to keep other animals out. And the reason that we're doing that is because we really want to know if we rope an area off, we don't let any animals in, is the grass going to grow differently there than where they're allowed to browse? And so we're kind of getting at like, how much do animals visit an area? Because if you imagine any other random part of the savanna where there aren't many animals, if we rope off an area, it's going to be the same as the area next to it. But if there's a lot of animals coming, then they're going to eat all the grass around it. We can compare the two and see how they change.
All right, fascinating. We're going to see some more pictures of that in a moment. I assume these are a couple of your colleagues.
Yes, they are. That's Ali and Insalama. They are two of the techs. They've worked with people from all over the world on different research projects. They're both undergraduates at different universities. They attend classes remotely and they work with ecologists and scientists throughout the day. And they're starting to work on their own theses as well. They're measuring a bone in that picture right there that's quite large. That's why they have the big scale.
Excellent. What's this beautiful view? Is this the sort of scenery you get on a daily basis?
In the right now, yes, the rains have essentially stopped. It's gonna get drier and drier. There's gonna be a lot less green, but that's from one of the high points in the park. And I've been throughout basically almost a lot of the area that you can see there.
Excellent. Very, very beautiful.
And then this is one of the carcass sites. So this is a family of elephants. I don't know which one is the matriarch, unfortunately. I believe she's the big one there. But they're at the carcass site of another female, and they revisit and they revisit and they revisit. And this is a really interesting behavior because elephants, we kind of call it colloquially mourning. I don't know if it's exactly the same as human mourning, but they do revisit carcass sites. And this is interesting because they move the bones. We have camera trap videos of them picking up bones, of them tossing them around, of them moving them away from site. And so we really want to know, what is the ecological impact of these visitations? Because the elephants are going there on purpose. They know where this carcass is. They're revisiting it, and their actions have an impact. And so we want to look at the impact of those actions on the environment.
All right, excellent. Before we get too into one of your actual field research sites, I wanted to share one more video that sort of sets the scene for what it's like for your daily commute to your work site. You know, some of us drive, some of us walk, some of us bike to school. This was, I thought, a great representation of what your walk to work looks like.
Oh, yeah, that's with the game guard, that's with Herman, and that's me carrying all of the stuff on my back out into the field. But yeah, usually I'm with a few other people. I think this time I was setting up some of the exclosures on my own. So that's the beginning of a really long walk. What's funny is the person recording that recorded me walking backwards, coming back, because I had to get the camera and the person too. So there was one other person there with me.
Excellent. So we have you then arriving at a site. Actually, you know, before we get to a site, I have a couple of the camera trap photos, or the camera trap photos that you had shared that I can sort of scroll through, and you can maybe tell us what these cameras show us.
Yes. Okay, so look at the elephant right there. I believe this is to your left. I don't know if you're mirrored or not, but in the corner there's an elephant. She's got her trunk on the skull. And Tim, if you click the next photo, yes, you can see her start to roll that skull away. And we've found these skulls kilometers away from the area that they died. So we know that elephants not only revisit, but they're moving things away. They're taking bones, they're moving them to other places, they're defecating in the areas as well. There she goes off of the camera moving. I think the next one is jawbone. Yes, so we've seen that elephants have this kind of fascination with jawbones. They specifically will look at teeth, at tusks, at skulls, and you can see her picking up the jawbone right there. And watch the next clip, next picture. Yep, you'll see her picking it up. And then after that, you'll see her putting it back down, I think. Yep, so she's moving it into a different location, and so she's affecting the bone field dynamic. She's changing the landscape right there. So a lot of people know that, or it's widely accepted, that elephants are ecosystem engineers, you know, which just means that they have a big impact on the environment. But they also have that impact in death, and also in revisiting these carcass sites, they're continuing that impact. So they have even more of an impact than what we thought. That's what I'm looking at.
Amazing.
I think the last one, I don't know if this one will play. Okay, maybe not.
Nope. Yeah, sorry, I don't have the video, but I thought, let's scroll through these one more time so we can see all that movement. How cool. Do you set up and maintain camera traps like this as well, or is this someone else's work?
No, that's camera traps for this study, yeah. So those, I'll be using some of those camera trap data for one of the chapters of my dissertation. But they do, we have them at, a lot of them we've taken down so we could start analyses, but we do still have camera traps throughout the park looking at this kind of behavior. And we find that the behaviors around female sites and elephant and male sites, cow versus bull sites, seems to be different, which is not something we were expecting.
Very interesting. Now, before we get into the sites, I wanted to bring one question that's already popping up in the chat up onto the screen, sort of the interaction of live elephants with elephant death sites. A student in Ms. Lee Bloxton's class would like to know, with your research, have you had issues with elephants intruding on your active research sites?
Yes, I think that's, you might have something queued up with that, but yeah, elephants mess with everything. I mean, in the United States, when I worked with the Smithsonian, we would have bears that would occasionally take things down, but elephants just mess with everything. I mean, they're very, very, very curious, and they're very, very smart. And so if there's something at their carcass site that they want to go to, they're immediately going to play with it. They want to know like what it is, why it's there. They're touching everything. They've taken down I have some camera trap footage of one camera trap. You'll see a foot coming down and crushing it. They're constantly messing with everything. But we find that they don't mess with older carcass sites or male sites as much. They don't really revisit after around a year and a half. They tend to stop revisiting, and they don't really visit male carcasses as much. So we don't see as much damage. It's really around female sites. And we've seen them display a lot of stress. We've gotten videos of them not happy that we were there, really flaring their ears, and making threat displays either towards the camera or in the vicinity where we've been. And they don't do that at sites that we haven't touched. I don't really know exactly what it means.
Interesting. Thank you, students, for that great question. Let's spend a couple minutes talking about, you arrive at a site that obviously an elephant has died at, either recently or not so recently. What's the scientific process of an ecologist for, setting up a site and collecting the sort of data that's going to be useful for you and your work, Ryan?
That's an excellent question. So all of this, to take it a step further back, all this has to begin long before we ever get to the site. An important part about science is you need to have your objective, or you need to have your hypothesis before you actually get there. Of course, you can make observations when you're there and you can change things, but you have to have an idea of the question you want to ask. And so my initial question for the first chapter at these sites was just, I wanted to know what's essentially changing the dynamics of the bones, who's moving them. And so to be able to do that, I had to set up methodology long before I arrived to South Africa, which is a bit challenging because I hadn't been here. So I didn't know exactly what I would see. And that's why I like these two sites. This site right here that you're looking at, this is a female that was 60 days old, but the one before that was a male that was almost, I think, 240 days old. You could see they look entirely, I wasn't expecting this. I thought an elephant carcass site would be an elephant carcass site. And I was wrong. But I'm able to prove that I was wrong because at that site, that male site right there, I staked into the center. I found the center of the carcass site based on the GPS data given. I also look for gut contents that have spilled out of the elephant at tail hairs and things like that. We find the center of the carcass site and mark it. We map the bones, the location of the bones, how they've moved. We identify the bones. Like here, yeah, this is good. This is showing that exact center, and you can see my transect lines moving off of it. And so because I set up the methodology before arriving, I'm now able to answer more questions. I'm able to actually show, okay, we found something unexpected. There's a significant difference between male and female sites. We weren't expecting that. But because we set up good methodologies, I can say that now. If I hadn't had those questions long in before I even went into the field, I wouldn't be able to answer those.
Excellent. I'm going to sort of keep scrolling through these photos, and I know these come from different sites.
Yes.
You can maybe just sort of tell us what we're looking at.
Sure. So that is a femur from a site that we've nicknamed Big Bull. That is one of the largest males that we've found. I don't know how much that weighed in pounds. I know in kilograms, I think that femur was one of our heaviest at 26 kg. And so this is a male that I don't remember how long ago he died. I think he died 5 years ago, and we were still able to find many of his remains and around the same location. And they hadn't moved very much. We've been back to that site. I've been back to that site 3 times now. We also did some filming there, and it hasn't changed, which is interesting. Essentially showing that elephants and hyenas and scavengers at some point stop visiting these sites.
Interesting. I'm going to bring another question on. Lots of questions popping up in the chat related to things that you've said so far. This is from Miss Mesk and her students. They're curious to know, have you noticed any relationship between the age of the elephants and the actions they take at these sites?
Goodness, that is really interesting. I am going to have to remember that because I have noticed a difference, but I haven't documented it. I haven't written any of this down. Yes, the older elephants, let's say the adults, so elephants over the age of 35, are constantly, it almost seems like a more directed behavior where they're picking things up, they're putting things down, they're kind of walking around. Meanwhile, the smaller ones, especially the babies, will just almost be running around. There doesn't seem to be as much interaction with the carcass site. but those of older age are definitely showing more interaction. But that's not official. I have to actually go through and check the camera traps for that. I'm going to remember to do that. That's just anecdotal.
Thank you, Ms. Mess, for that great question. Let's bring up another one related to what you've said just recently. Ms. LeBlanc and students would like to know, why do you think there is a difference between female and male burial interactions? Could it have something to do with their matriarchal structure?
That's exactly what yes, that's exactly what I thought. I'm not sure if I'm right though. So in Kruger, there's over 30,000, 40,000. There's so many elephants here. They don't have names or identifications. There's so many of them. You can see 2 to 20 to 200 on a regular day. But in Kenya, I have a colleague that's working up there in Samburu, and they actually have the name of every single elephant. Every single elephant has a name. And so they know the elephants that died, and they also know the relationship of those who visit. And they've said that those that are visiting don't appear to be related, but I don't know for sure. I had thought, the reason that I had thought it was so different is I thought that it was the family coming back and revisiting. Like if grandma had died, they would keep coming back and seeing her and visiting her. And that could be the case, but at the moment, we're not really sure. I think it makes sense, but my colleagues are telling me otherwise. It's a very bad answer.
No, very interesting. I think it shows for all of the young explorers watching that you can have maybe an idea of what you think may be true, but you have to follow the data that you're collecting to find out what actually is true. You'd shared a video of the bone movements, and I want to share those here just because the way that you described and showed us through the camera trap photos of live elephants moving bones is very interesting, and you've got a good example of this here. So give me a moment here to bring this up.
This is the remains of a female that died a few months ago. You can see the dung over here from other elephants that have visited. And her skull is right over here. You can see where the hyenas have been chewing, some of the bones that are leftovers from them. Still some meat on the skull and on the jaw.
All right, and then here's the one about the movement.
This is pretty close to exactly where this elephant died. You can see we've marked it and taken some samples around the outside. But what I want you to see is that this bone here, for example, the pelvis, was dragged here. You can see it's been damaged. You can see all of the grass that's kind of been ripped out as scavengers pulled it and moved it. But not all of the bones have been placed like that. Sometimes we find bones where instead of showing any type of drag marks, they're placed almost directly upon green grass. And although hyenas together can move a bone like this, like a femur, they wouldn't be able to drag it out here without there being any evidence of them doing so. So we think that bones like this, where we see them just placed upon green grass, were likely moved there by elephants. We have a lot of camera trap footage showing elephants moving bones around and taking them away or throwing them around the carcass site. But you'll see that in some areas where the grass is green, the bones are almost placed here instead of dragged.
That's so amazing. That's one amazing thing to observe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we had suspected. So the prevailing hypothesis is that it's mostly hyenas. If you were to ask anybody before we began, what's moving the bones, what's dragging the bones? Hyenas, because hyenas they're pretty big and they can crunch through bones and they eat bones, and we know they move them. But what we're finding is that it's probably more elephants that are responsible for this bone movement, because in Kenya and in areas where the elephant density is lower, we don't see that amount of movement. Like this is a site, this is another female. You can see the area where she died. We've been calling it the impact zone. I don't know why, but there's like the grave soil you can see right there. And that soil is quite toxic, although the soil microbial activity is high and it's very compacted. So there's not a lot growing there, but you'll see the ring outside and the movement of those bones that eventually stop at a certain point.
Interesting. All right, here's just another photo of you, some equipment it looks like you might be using at your site.
Yeah, so this is there's a scale. I can see I've got a scale there. There's two different scales. There's a smaller one and a larger one. There's the drill for collecting some of that bone meal. There's the bag, the backpack, a lot of bags that go with it. Some of the field tapes that are already out there. And this is another male site. You can see the bones are bleached white. They've been around for quite some time in that area.
Great. That actually is a great segue to a student question we have in the chat from Miss Lake's classroom. Oh, wrong question. I'll come back to that one. The question they wanted to know is, how can you tell which bones are male or female? How do you know that?
Okay, so that's a good question. So one is that you can actually tell by the indent in the skull. They have male and female elephants have slightly different skull shapes. But the more correct answer is that for each of these sites, the park tells us the sex of the animal that died, because the Kruger National Park will go there in advance and extract the tusks to prevent poachers from getting from them. So the people that go there and collect the tusks are the people that identify the sex and tell us afterwards. I couldn't tell. Another thing is that the ribs are really hard to tell apart, but the femurs, like right there, you can see the femur in the foreground. The male's bones are significantly bigger. So if you find extremely big bones, you know it's a male. But medium size could be young male, could be an adult female. I wouldn't know without the information from the park.
All right.
Way too long of an answer. Short answer is the park tells me. That's how I know.
Miss Lake's students, thank you so much for that. And maybe while we're at it, let's bring up your second question here. Why do we think the elephants move the bones? Do we have a theory?
I mean, we don't really know why they move them. We call it mourning behavior. They're there. They know that those bones were from an elephant. They can smell it. They know that an elephant died there. Perhaps they're gathering data as to why they died. Perhaps they're trying to figure out who it is. Maybe it's just their way of saying goodbye. I don't know. It's hard to not anthropomorphize them. We don't want to anthropomorphize them, but the fact that they visit these graves, that they move the bones, they take the bones, they put them in their mouths sometimes, they carry them for kilometers and kilometers, roll them away. They have some kind of interest with this. And it's only elephant bones. They don't do this to other bones. They don't do this to giraffe bones or hippo bones or human. They don't care. It's other elephants specifically that they move. Kind of like how humans mourn other humans, maybe. I don't know.
Very interesting. Can you, for the younger students who are watching, can you define what you mean by anthropomorphize, the $1 million word?
Anthropomorphize. So that's when you try and give human characteristics to a non-human thing. Like elephants are not humans. So when I'm saying mourning, I don't necessarily mean mourning in the same way that a human might mourn at a funeral. What I mean is that they have these unique behaviors around their dead that no other animals, well, very few other animals seem to have. There are other animals that show these kind of, as we're calling them, mourning behaviors around their dead, like great apes and many cetaceans, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as a human mourning. It might or might not. Sorry, right. Definition, anthropomorphize, giving human characteristics to non-human things.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. We've gotten a look at some of your field sites and heard a little bit about it. This is a more recent dead elephant site, and you actually have a fascinating video that I want to show along with this. It just sort of gives I think gives a great overview of, you know, maybe a dead elephant at an earlier stage before it gets to bones on the ground. Let's take a look. Can you tell us what's happening here?
Yes, so one thing you don't see, there's a lion nearby. I'll talk about him in a moment. So this is, I don't even know how many vultures in the same place at the time. There's hyenas there, there's vultures, there's all of these scavengers eating the elephant that has died, pulling apart its body. I've seen the vultures going in and out of the carcass, hyenas ripping and tearing at it. And there's a lion off to the right, and he's just kind of laying there. He doesn't care, but something I didn't get is the moment he stands up, all these animals suddenly step back. So this is within 48 hours of the death of an elephant, because in the first 24 hours, the other elephants are still nearby. We still see elephants there. They almost guard it. And then after the carcass starts to bloat is when the elephants leave, and that's when the scavengers come in.
Very interesting. It's a lot of meat to have just lying around.
Yes, it is. A lot of vultures there. Every hyena anywhere nearby will be there soon too.
Is this one of the ways you identify where perhaps an elephant has died recently?
Yeah, one of the best, not best ways, but one of the many ways is looking for circling vultures, because vultures will circle. There's a lot of vultures here. There's a very healthy vulture population, although they're being poached, unfortunately. But you won't see the number of vultures like this at anything except an elephant. And so if you're driving or hiking and you see this huge gathering of vultures from the sky, you know that there's something that died nearby. And if it's that number, then you know it's an elephant. It's a really easy giveaway that something happened there.
Great. I was fascinated by this picture of the tree. It's a magnificent tree, but what else are we looking at here?
Oh, great question. So that's a baobab. Yeah, the tree itself is massive and interesting, but also if you look closely, you see all those scars on the tree. That's from elephants. Elephants use their tusks to dig into the baobab just during the dry season. They'll eat a lot of the insides, they'll eat a lot of the pulp and bark from the tree, and then the trees have adapted to this, so they'll actually regrow after they've been damaged. And so that's why you'll see those scars, but the tree is still alive.
Wow, you can really see that those marks only go up to a certain height, like the tallest imaginable elephant.
Yep, that's true.
Very cool. All right, so now let's get into the posts. We saw you getting out of your truck with all of those posts and fencing material. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you do, how you use those posts.
Okay, so those are for the quadrats or the exclosures. So 4 of those are used to construct a single exclosure, which means we need to carry out 16 of them. They're quite heavy. And then when we're out there, we put them into the ground to build these like exclosures, these little cages that doesn't let other animals in.
All right, excellent. I'm going to include, there's a photo.
Yep. So this is what they look like when they're installed, and how we want them to look for the entire year.
Excellent. I've got actually a short video of you putting in some of these posts. It looks like tough work.
Yeah. It's so loud. Yes, that's using a post pounder that we had to drag out there and hammering these things in to be able to set up the exclosures. You can see the mesh by my feet there too.
Excellent. Okay.
At a distance from the carcass. So we have those that are set up just 2.5 meters away, 5 meters, 10 and 15 meters to compare to the nearby control.
All right, excellent. That's maybe the before picture. What are we looking at here?
This is a failed experiment. The exclosure, the whole exclosure experiment is not failed, but essentially in 2023 we set these up, and in the north of the park, all 5 of them the elephants just completely destroyed. And I put 5 sites in the north, and they destroyed all of them. But they didn't destroy the ones in the south. So based on that, I had to redo and set up new exclosures in the south of the park only. So now we have 10 plots with 4 exclosures each, all in the south, and we've removed the north because the elephants were just really mad about it. I don't know why, but they weren't happy with us there. So I couldn't really do the experiment.
Seems like keeping elephants out of some place you don't want them is a big task for anybody.
Yes, it is, because they're elephants. They'll do whatever they want. They don't care. They don't care if I don't want them there. If I ask them nicely, they're still gonna mess with it.
Excellent. All right, we've got some cool bone photos here.
Yeah, so that's a male skull on the left. I'm not sure of the skull on the right. I think it might be another male, but the one on the left is more recent. These skulls are massive. I mean, you can sit in it. It's just, they're so big. And it's fascinating that the elephants will actually take the time and effort to move them and roll them around the savannah.
Excellent. I'm going to sort of do a quick scan through of all the other creatures that you encounter while you're out, focusing on elephants and dead elephants, but also just a reminder, you're in one of the most vibrant national parks in the world.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by lots of creatures. You talked a little bit about that, about what you see out your front door when you wake up in the morning, but let's do a quick scroll through some of the other things you encounter.
Yeah, so these are vervet monkeys. There are vervets here and there's baboons. The vervets are kind of mischievous, but they're smaller. The baboons I would never get. I was right next to these guys. I would not get that close to baboons. Baboons can open doors, man. I don't trust baboons at all. I've seen them steal things. I've seen them get into cars somehow. Yeah, so the vervets are a bit different. They're cute. And then these are wild dogs. I forget if this is the one. I kind of cheated when I found these because I looked. There was one with a collar on, so my colleagues knew where she was. I don't remember if this is the one with the collar, but that's a wild dog, and those are pups. They're actually they're very rare to see here. They're gorgeous creatures too, and they stay pretty far away from people, unlike lions who really don't care.
Speaking of lions.
Yeah, so this is at a kill. I mean, I've seen lions walking alongside the road. I've been stopped in the field because there were lions nearby. There's most of the time, if lions are in the way, you can get them out of your way pretty easily. You clap really loud to announce yourself, and they just kind of shuffle off. Hippos don't do that, but in the bush, I've run into lions quite a few times. They're most annoying when they're on the road because they just walk very slow and they don't care if you're there. They're not going to get out of the way. They're just going to keep going. And that's another wild dog. Yeah, she's the one with the collar.
Can see the collar.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then these guys, I have some stories about them because they can be. So these are buffalo. These are water buffalo, and I would put them right underneath hippos in terms of the biggest. Hippos are the number one threat. These guys are number two. There was one time where I was working at a carcass site. I remember turning around, I had my back to them, and I saw that there was just a few water buffaloes looking at me. And I went back and I looked up again, and they were closer. It was like a cat. You know, if you have cats, you know what I'm saying? You look down, you look up, and they'll be like closer. So I was like going like this, and I look up, and they're like closer. And I was like, I don't know what to do right now. And so then I just jumped really suddenly and they all ran away. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because if they decided to stampede me, I would have been in trouble. I mean, if you're in an open brush area and these guys stampede, it's not good.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then these guys, these are zebras. You see them everywhere. And that's a wildebeest. Wildebeest are not smart at all. If there's one animal that I continually see in trouble and putting itself in trouble, it's the wildebeest. I don't know why, but they're not the smartest. And then this is a kudu. I see kudu pretty often. They're big, though. He doesn't look too big in that, but these are about the size of a reindeer. I mean, it's taller than me standing next to it. Very big and beautiful.
There's our lion on the street.
There's the lions in the road. Yeah, they just walk slowly. They won't, like, if you're in the bush and you want them to move, you can clap or something. But if you're in your car and they don't care because they know you're not going to do anything, I think. They're like, oh, that's car. He doesn't care. But if you're out there with them, they'll kind of perk up and move, but they won't if they're in the road.
Magnificent.
Yep, another leopard. I guess this is the first leopard. Seen quite a few leopard. I've never been in the bush with a leopard. I've only seen them on the road. I guess they could have been nearby and I wouldn't have known because they're really good at hiding. A rhino, and you'll see that his horn has been cut. The park dehorns not all, but most of the rhinos in an attempt to deter poaching because poachers are after the horn, and when they shoot them, they'll remove the horn up to the skull, so essentially cutting away the whole part. But if there's only this nub left, it essentially deters poachers because there's so little of the horn that's not worth it to them.
Okay, those are just a few of your neighbors as you're out in the bush doing your field work. I want to bring in another question that we have from Miss Lee Blackson's class related to the frequency of visits. How often are newer sort of elephant carcass sites revisited, or how do they come back right away, or I assume, wait a period of time?
Yeah, so if an elephant dies in a group, they will stay by that elephant usually for about 24 hours or so until bloat starts to take. So a carcass is first fresh, That's like the meat that you eat in the grocery store. That's a fresh carcass. And then bloat is when the animal starts to expand or the meat starts to spoil. And this is when it gets a really bad smell. And that's maybe 48 hours or so afterwards. That's when the 24, 48, that's when the elephants will leave usually. And that's when the scavengers come in. And after that, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month after death, we see continual visits. Sometimes staying at the site for days or leaving the site and coming right back to it, and repeated visits. And then that kind of tapers off until around 500 days or so, when the visits become less frequent. And around 800 days, between 800 and 1,000 days, that's when visitation kind of stops. They might happen through, but as often as they would happen through anywhere else. They're no longer like visiting.
Very interesting. Great question, Miss Leibach. And students, Miss Mormon students are asking, have you ever been attacked by a wild animal?
No, no. Well, no, not here, at least. Not in Kruger. I've had other run-ins with smaller animals, like in Costa Rica. I've had problems with monkeys, and I've been bitten by a lot of snakes, a lot of turtles, a lot of lizards, but that's because I'm like trying to catch them. But here, no, I haven't been attacked. Thanks for asking.
What sort of precautions do you take, knowing that you are on their turf? You know, you are in this national park. What do you do to not only keep yourself safe, but also keep the animals safe from you?
A really good question. So, I mean, when I'm out here, I'm working, right? So I'm trying to get data, and I am in their territory. So you talk loudly is one of the biggest things, is like trying to make noise. Like most animals, you remember, humans are native to this continent, to Africa. This is all of our ancestral home. And so the animals here have adapted to humans, and they don't really want to be around us for the most part. And so if you make a lot of noise, or you shuffle, or you talk loudly in the bush, the animals will generally stay away. And if they're standing their ground, you don't walk there. If they are not moving for some reason, that means you don't walk to where they are. So it's a bit different in other areas. Like I've worked in Costa Rica and in Ecuador and stuff, where I've been trying to catch different animals, and that's completely different because you're trying to actually get them. Here, I want them to know I'm here, and I don't want them to get surprised, because that's when a problem can happen. If an elephant doesn't know you're there, and suddenly you're there. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song you sing when you're trying to make your presence known, or like a favorite way to make a lot of noise, or just heavy stomping?
Usually talking to who's ever around me, or they'll start talking to each other, and we'll just talk about whatever. We'll come up with a topic. A song would be a good idea. I don't have a song. That would be fun.
Excellent. Well, I've put a last call for questions in the chat. If there are any other student questions, while we have Ryan here for just a couple more minutes, we're getting close to our time for today. I'd be happy to add those into our conversation. While students are thinking of any last questions, Ryan, has anything happened sort of since we last connected with you that surprised you or delighted you, or sort of like made you realize, wow, like this work is really cool, or there's so much more to learn about what you're working on right now?
I think that a few things, really. I mean, one experience that was really cool is we were just walking in the bush, and we were talking loudly, and we didn't think we would see anything because, again, we're not trying to sneak up on any animals or anything. And as we were walking through the bush, like in a clearing right up ahead, we just saw one wild dog like just turn and look at us. We just kind of looked back, and then like 4 or 5 other wild dogs came, and then all of the puppies came with it. And it was a really amazing experience. I'd say every sunrise here is incredible, and every sunset. They're unlike anything I've seen in the U.S. outside of, like the West and in Arizona. Brilliant red hues. And elephant behaviors, I haven't seen too many new elephant behaviors, but honestly, every day you're around elephants, they kind of do something surprising. Or you'll see like a close-knit family unit. I've seen I've once seen recently, there was a herd of elephants. We stopped because there were elephants nearby, and we didn't they were all around us. And so we couldn't really keep walking at this point because we didn't want to disturb them. We couldn't really go back. They had kind of cut off where we were going and where we were coming from. So we just kind of had to wait. And so you're sitting in the bush and there's like rustling and branches and there's elephants moving around. And you can tell they're there, but they're kind of keeping their distance because they know we're there, but they don't really get that, like, I want to go that way. They don't care that, like, I want to go there. But they don't care. They're just kind of being elephants. And I remember seeing a little one. I'm just kind of wade out into the bush and he just like flopped over and laid his trunk down. And his mom like walked over to him and he, with his trunk, grabbed his mom's leg and just started getting dragged like this. He could just, like he didn't want to walk because he's got little legs. He didn't want to walk anymore. He just like laid down and started getting dragged. And then like he stopped dragging him and he went like, he made this noise like, and he just kind of got up and started running after the rest of them. But yeah, it was pretty amazing.
How funny. We have a flurry of 3 final questions from Miss Mormon students. And then I want to close with one final short video of rain frogs that you shared with me that I think would be just a fun way to end today. So rapid fire. What's the most endangered animal in the park?
Probably pangolins. Pangolins. I've never seen a pangolin. There's people that have been working here for 15, 20 years that are out at the park every day and they've never seen a pangolin.
Okay, very good. What's your favorite animal within the park?
Ooh, I really like the monitor lizards and the Nile crocodiles. A lot of people don't like the crocodiles or the reptiles. I really like them. Oh, and the chameleons. Okay, sorry, that was bad. Okay, favorite animal, chameleon. Let's go with chameleon.
Chameleons, excellent, good choice. And do the animals have a good water source within the park?
Oh, that's such a good question. So they do sometimes. Right now, they're losing more and more of their water source as rains are stopping and the rivers are drying and the ponds are drying. But elephants can dig into the sand. So there's sand rivers here where the water under the ground. So animals can't get to it, but elephants can. And so elephants, I've seen this numerous times. They'll start digging into the sand, digging and digging and digging, and then they'll get to water and they'll start drinking or they'll be playing. And then when they leave, other animals will come there and use the water that the elephants dug up.
Interesting.
So the short answer is, in the wet season, yes, they have lots of good water. In the dry season, no, they don't have any at all. And it's the elephants that dig up the water that other animals use.
How crafty. Another example of them being ecosystem engineers.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to close. We have learned so many fascinating things about your fieldwork. Thank you for taking us virtually into the field with you today. Can you set us up for this very brief video of rain frogs that we're going to close with today? I think it's going to surprise and delight everybody who's here today.
Yes. So, all right. At the end of the dry season, and this is in October, November, the earth here is parched. It's dry. It's cracked. When you're walking in the bush, everywhere where there was mud, it's cracked, split earth. The trees have all lost their leaves. Everything is bone dry. A spark can start a wildfire. And then the rains come in. There's a downpour and there's a downpour and there's a downpour, and it can go on for days. And at that point, all of the savanna starts waking up. And these are some of the first animals that wake up. I guess I'll stop there and then I'll explain.
All right, here we go.
Yeah. So these are rain frogs eating termites. And they are right there. That's an exit from a termite mound. And so it was right in the tile, right where I was living. And the termites just start coming out. Those ones with the wings, those are males. They're drones. They're getting ready to mate. And the rain frogs you see that all over the park. You'll just see animals all over termite mounds just waiting and eating everything. Look at how fat they are. They're eating so much. They keep eating and eating and eating. You'll see lizards doing this, and birds are doing this, and mongoose doing this.
Right,
just everywhere where there's termites. It's like a free-for-all.
It is amazing. It's like a buffet that comes to you.
Yeah, it comes right to you. Conveyor belt. You just keep eating.
How amazing. We have, over the course of this wonderful conversation, Ryan, seen the sun begin to set behind you. We're starting to sort of lose you to the nighttime. Yeah. So I think now is a good time for us to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us today. That is all the time we have. It is so much fun journeying into the field with you today. Ryan, thank you for taking us with you. Thank you for the wonderful videos and the great explanations of your work. Students and educators, thank you for the wonderful questions. And again, don't miss Ryan's amazing articles on his Journey homepage. There are more photos, there are more short videos, and there's a lot more detail about some of the aspects of his work that you were curious about. So make sure and check that out. His link is in the chat. Always check back weekly for the latest articles. We are so glad to be on this journey with you all. And until next time, keep exploring. That is it for today. Ryan, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
See you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.